Hello and welcome. You're on Strategic Insights, 5th edition on Strat News Global. I'm Nitin Gokhale. On this edition, we are going to discuss the maritime dimension to the China challenge that India faces and, of course, the larger geostrategic construct. And to discuss the larger maritime construct and the competition between India and China in probably Indian Ocean region and South China Sea, I'm joined by Vice Admiral Satish Soni to my right. He's been the Commander-in-Chief of the Eastern Naval Command. And of course, to my left, Major General Rajiv Narayanan, who's the faculty member at the USI, with whom we are doing this series of discussions on the China challenge. Welcome both of you to this program. If I can turn to you, Admiral Soni, what is the main China challenge for India in the maritime domain, especially in Indian Ocean region?
You see, for the first time, the Chinese Navy, we call it the CCP Navy now, entered the Indian Ocean. It was in 2008. So you can say that till 2008, they were really a navy which was operating in South China Sea and in their coastal waters. But in 2008, for the first time, they came ostensibly for anti-piracy patrols in the Gulf of region, in the Gulf of Aden. And we were quite surprised at that time that this navy of, this flotilla of, two old ships, escorted by one logistic ship with the rusted hulls, was able to stay in the Gulf of Aden for 3 months and went back. So I would say in some respects it was an impressive performance. But gone are those days. They have continuously maintained a presence in the Indian Ocean now. The flotilla has only become bigger. It has added destroyers, it has added big logistic ships, it has added submarines. It has not only done the Gulf of Aden patrols, but it has thereafter gone to the east coast of Africa, sometimes to the Mediterranean. They have exhibited staying power of over 6 months, and followed now by presence of intelligence ships. And so their presence in the Indian Ocean has been registered. And as you know, it is on account of their dependency on trade with the Indian Ocean littoral countries. So you can expect them to stay. And while, we don't have any maritime disputes with China, but then we have a dispute in our borders in the north, and that makes their presence a little complicated. But more importantly, I think their presence in the Indian Ocean emboldens Pakistan. Because Pakistan doesn't have a very strong navy. They are a navy which normally stays close to the coast. But if they have this big brother navy which is trying to help them, as they have indeed tried to not only register the presence of their ships, but they had Hambantota, they had Gwadar, they have, Fedu Fenolo, they have presence in Myanmar, they have a base in Djibouti. So all this adds, to the final narrative that they are our maritime neighbors now. And, with the misunderstandings that we have had in Ladakh, they become a challenge to us.
That's an important point to make, that, everything is connected. It's not just the maritime domain alone. But General Narayanan, you study China quite deeply, and we've been speaking to you about China challenge both on land and in the maritime domain. The larger Indo-Pacific construct, which is now becoming an area of interest not just to India or Australia, but also, of course, the United States has always been present. But now one hears that China is little getting a little alarmed about even the Quad countries getting together. But they're trying to bring in Russia. Or even today I saw some reports that India is saying that let's bring in Russia. How do you see that region or that playground panning out in the next few years?
See, China has a continuity of its strategy, and its strategy is single point: to come at par and beat the USA. and become the sole leading power in the world. And the first step towards that is to control this region. Though we term it now as Indo-Pacific, China is still averse to the term Indo-Pacific. They still call it the Asia-Pacific. Primarily because I feel that if you give it the term Indo-Pacific, then in some way it brings India in. And it looks down on India because in this region, the only resident power in this region, apart from, of course, USA, which is an external resident power here, is India. And India has a totally different system of functioning than the Chinese way of functioning. And China wants to propagate its way of functioning. How is it doing? The BRI or the Ida Ilu, one belt, one road, which I call it an octopus. It has 8 tentacles. There are 7 land corridors, 6 which were there earlier. The BIMC has now become the China-Myanmar Economic Corridor. The latest addition is the China-Nepal Economic Corridor. That is the 7 land tentacles, and the maritime tentacle, the maritime Silk Route, is the 8th tentacle. What is these tentacles? They have suction cups and they suck the prey dry. And the BRI is just that. It is a suction cup which sucks the country's economies dry. And that is where when you look at their strategy today, when you derive the military strategy of war zone campaign states categorically that it is not against a superpower. It's against local, that is the regional countries. And the moment any other superpower and alliances come together, it beats its strategy. It is not geared militarily as yet to be able to stand up to partnerships and alliances. That is why every time it refuses to do any deals multilaterally, it wants to do it bilaterally. That is its strategy. And that is why you find that they are very afraid of the Quad. And as the Quad goes up to a multi-domain coverage and becomes a net security provider of the region, it defeats China's outreach because there becomes now an alternate narrative to its BRI which would be available. And like you pointed out lately, though I don't think Russia may like to join into the Quad, and that is why today morning I was reading that India has proposed
a trilateral.
India, Japan and Russia.
Yeah.
And Russia has become very, I would say, of late, Putin has become angry. I won't say Russia. Putin has become angry with Xi on 2-3 issues. When Indians had spoken to him about the Ladakh issue, what is leaking out now is that he had assured that little bit concessions here and there, and it will peter out. It didn't. Then when they celebrated the Vladivostok Day, the Chinese laid a claim on Vladivostok. So that is the reason, background to why he today is not keen to give out the S-400 so easily to China. That said, we need to keep a very careful watch on China. When you read their Science of Military Strategy of 2013, which was released by the Academy of Military Sciences, which controls the strategic thinking of the Chinese military. It's a very interesting thing. For the first time ever, from active defense, which was propounded by Mao, that is, you would be defensive at the grand strategy level, but you would be offensive, coin any incident and become offensive at the military level, local level. They now have brought in a term called forward defense. And in forward defense, we have very clearly said that they are going to increase the battle space in air, in land, in sea, in space, and of course, cyber, there is no space, boundaries. So how are they planning to do that? It is like what the Admiral had mentioned, like what you have in Djibouti, Gwadar, what they're wanting to do in Hambantota, they have not yet done, and what they're wanting in Myanmar. This, they have coined a phrase called overseas strategic strong points. They do not want to use the word military bases. They find it imperialistic, but the overseas strategic strong points are nothing less. And in their strategy, they have very clearly said that it is these strategic strong points, which will provide them the depth to their frontiers, whether it be maritime frontiers, whether it be continental frontiers.
Exactly.
So there is a scope, reason to suspect that given at a point in time, over these 7 continental corridors that are there, you will also find overseas strategic strong points to protect their assets out there.
Right.
So it is with this reach that they want to come here, and which is why they are scared of the Quad. That this reach will get defeated because it is not yet reached.
But that's a fair point. But Admiral Soni, you spoke about a little bit about Pakistan-China nexus on the in the maritime domain. But do you see a potential for that collusivity to grow and also draw in some Gulf states, maybe in that kind of a thing? Because if China wants to extend its influence in Indian Ocean region towards the Western Indian Ocean region also, do they need more support, or will they use what they are doing right now?
You see, they will certainly need more support. You know, the Chinese Navy has been expanding at an exponential rate in the last 15 years. In fact, just a few days back, there's a Department of Defense report which says in the last 15 years, the Chinese have added 119 ships under, you know, some listed categories. And interesting, it is to note that the US has declined by 125 ships in the same categories. I mean, that's not to say that they're already matching. They may be adding to the numbers, but in terms of technology, training, human resource, doctrines, etc., the US Navy is, you know, far ahead. But
and
then they have so much
tradition.
Yeah, and then they have, you know, more responsibilities also. But what I was getting at is that after some time, they will be able to spare more ships for the Indian Ocean, right? They would be able to spare more long-range maritime patrol aircraft for the Indian Ocean. They would be able to spare UAVs, you know, for surveillance. And these bases, which they are logistic strong points, you know, which they have, you know, they are not so reliable because they, you know, these countries can always be pressurized, whether it is Djibouti or it is
or Jakpu.
But one area which which cannot be pressurized and which is, you know, beholden to China is Pakistan. That is where their importance lies.
Right.
So you can see that after 5 to 10 years, Gwadar is certainly going to be a base which is going to be at China's beck and call. There are going to be strategic communication facilities. There are going to be basing facilities, repair facilities. Ships are going to be based there. And you might have the first Chinese overseas command, the Indian Ocean Command, based out of Gwadar. Now, for China, Indian Ocean is very important for obvious reasons. I won't go into details. But in the Indian Ocean itself, the regions which are, or the sub-regions become important is, one is the Gulf, you know, for the fossil fuels that they give. And the second region is the East African region, from where much of their trade from Africa flows. So they need to dominate those approaches. And so they need long legs, you know. And then what is important to them is Indonesia and the choke points through which their trade is going to flow. So this is what you can see that they are going to concentrate in. And the area around the Gulf, and you know, we see these moves they are making in Iran. They might fructify, and you know, we countries may have, you know, ourselves to blame for that. So you can expect China-Pakistan nexus to only improve. Pakistan is buying some ships. They are only 4 in number, and they are really not the very high end. They are also buying submarines from them, which will start coming in from 2023. So while by itself, Pakistan, I don't think, you know, is more than a pinprick for us. But together with the CCP Navy, I think that they can, you know, become a force to reckon with. In relative terms, I would say, because till now, we've never had any opposition in the Indian Ocean region. And suddenly we have this big neighbor, and a big neighbor with, you know, a smaller Pakistan.
And and deep pockets.
Correct.
But I'll come back to you on
Yeah.
what should be India's maritime response. But generally speaking about the larger construct again, India has tried to have, I won't say alliances, but improved relationships with the littorals. I mean, there are these Western Indian small nations like Seychelles, Mauritius, Madagascar, and Maldives, of course. So, how does India respond to that in the geostrategic construct? And maritime, I'll
Maritime.
ask Admiral. But in the geostrategic construct, what would be your assessment?
See, while you may be able to reach out to them, I would just take a step back and say that in 2017, the ADB had taken out a report on the quantum of money required for sustainable development goals, 15 of now 17 of them, which the UN had laid out in 2015. And in 2017 February, they had said what is required is close to $30 trillion is what is required. So while you may reach out with what? Every country wants money and infrastructure development. So that is where I keep saying, when I write or when I speak in any forum, I keep telling of, you have to partner with like-minded countries to be able to provide an alternate to these countries. Ultimately, after all, these are also democratic countries and they are answerable to the people. And if there is no development, that politician is going to lose his chair. And to save his chair, if Chinese are ready to give him money, so be it. He'll take it from them. You cannot say that, okay, don't take money from China and not give him anything in return. And hence, even with the Japanese, when I have spoken to, when they had come here, I had recommended to them that they have to make a Quad multi-domain, expand the Quad as the multi-domain and subsume everything that you are bringing in. Even with the Americans, I tell them that you have a Build Act. Build Act is 60 billion. What is 60 billion when China has gone around and promised close to $2 to $3 trillion? 60 billion is a drop. But when everybody joins together, then as they say in Hindi, boond boond se ghat bhare. So you will have something, may not be equal to what the Chinese are, but then at least he has something to show and you have an alternative.
Certainly, and that is something, that sentiment I have come across, at least in Sri Lanka. The new president of Sri Lanka, not so new president, but someone who got elected last year in November, he's constantly saying that just don't curse China or don't curse us. Bring some alternative models or investments with Australia, Japan, Singapore, US and India. And then I'm willing to give you what you want in my country. But that's something that we have to think very hard, and the Quad countries have to think very hard, I think. But let me turn to you, Admiral, again on what should be India's maritime response. What should Indian Navy be doing against what is clearly now the not so distant challenge and maybe a competition in Indian Ocean coming from China, Pakistan in a smaller way, and of course the other countries like Iran joining in.
Firstly is my personal opinion.
Of course.
We talk of the Indo-Pacific, but I personally feel that what should be important to India is the Indian Ocean region. We must look at Indian Ocean region first, right? Do we have a strategy for Indian Ocean region? And if we have one, have we voiced it? How do other people view us? Whether it is Sri Lanka or Maldives or Myanmar, etc. I mean, they must have a very clear view as to where we stand. In 2017, when President Trump came to power and, he came out of the TPP and he spoke of America first. China was very quick, and by June they had come out with their Asia-Pacific security paper, in which they very clearly warned, the smaller states not to get into a Cold War mentality, stop taking sides, etc. It was a very clear warning. Now, while I won't say that we should warn people, but there should certainly be some red lines. Our strategic intentions should be given out, and our neighbors should know that while we stand with them and we actually do. Indian Navy does a lot for them. And, they also they are responsible, for adequate responses. The second point which I want to make out is that one should not think that Indian Navy is a response. Maritime capability, maritime strategy is more than the Navy. You look at even China, they have a coast guard, they have that maritime militia, and organizing, your maritime strategy or people around you is extremely important. So we must give importance to maritime governance in the region. If you view from the eyes of, smaller countries, they don't like this big power competition. They don't like this simmering, they don't want to fall into
They don't want to get sucked into that competition.
Into any.
Yeah.
They are interested in improving maritime security.
Right.
They want to reap the dividend of the blue economy construct. They want to follow a sustainable development. So these are their problems, and this is, where we come in. Then we need to improve our maritime industrial base. This should be a whole of government approach.
Right.
Whether it is the fisheries or it is the coast guard or whether it is merchant
Environment
marine.
protection.
Yeah, there's just so many things.
Right.
I mean, they all have to be guided,
Sure.
by a maritime industrial complex strategy. And that has to be a whole of government approach. And it has to be an approach which not only meets the requirements of our country, but even those of our
immediate neighborhood.
So these are, I would say that some of the initiatives that we should take. The Indian Navy particularly, I think, we are getting very little resources.
Right.
We used to get up to 18%,
of the budget,
5 years
budget,
back.
Yes.
Now it is down to 12, where the defense budget itself has come down,
and
to
from
less
that
than
again
2%.
it's shrunk.
It has shrunk now. We used to commission, even when I retired, about 2 to 5 ships, big ships in a year. Today, the last ship was commissioned maybe last year. One ship is due for commissioning this year, which has also not happened. You compare that with China, 15 to 20 big ships in a year, and big ships at that. We've taken 20 years to build an aircraft carrier. They've built 3. So there is just so much of a difference, which has come into the capabilities of the Navy. And then there is an issue about technology, whether it, the platforms are not going to matter. What is going to matter is, the niche capabilities, that
the weapons that you have.
The weapons, whether it's unmanned combat, we have to be ready with.
Right.
We have to be able to, use space and
even undersea
maritime domain awareness. There is a lot being done. It's not that, and we while we speak of Quad, it is important to give importance to alliances in the Indian Ocean region first.
Right.
And we have our own IOR and we have our own IONs. I think these are the 2 organizations which need to be nurtured, right? These are France, for example, is a very important country.
Indian Ocean power.
There is an Indian Ocean power. So I would say that if we focus on our trilateral of India, France and US for the Indian Ocean security aspects, I think we will stand to gain a lot. And there is another issue. We talk of import of high-end technologies. Sometimes I wonder if low-end technologies are also important, because that is what our neighbors are using.
Right.
Myanmar, for example, we should be able to wean such countries off the Chinese dependence.
Right.
And they are the ones who don't need high-end technologies.
They need basic
they need basic technologies. And if the US is unable to supply to them, they could supply through India, where it becomes cost-effective for them to buy arms. And, so these are some of the aspects, which I think we must follow. And there is another, we have a very good example in combating piracy.
Right.
If you see for piracy, all 5 Security Council powers were on one side.
Right.
Right. So while politically people were in different camps, but they were together fighting a common cause.
Right.
How did they manage to do it? And if you go into details, you will find that it was the navies which made it
Worked in
possible.
unison, yeah.
Because here it was Iranian Navy helping the US Navy, warding off hijack attempts. South Korea, Japan, India, China, right? We were together escorting the ships.
Right.
We were on a common communication channel.
Sure.
And that is while politically there might be differences, but when a man is in uniform is given some task to do, he does it according to the standard operating procedures. That's a lieutenant commander doing it,
Correct.
reporting to a commodore who could be, from any other country.
Yes, exactly.
So IONS, for that matter, I think is a very good construct.
Right.
We must, build on it. We must build on what it can contribute to maritime security in the region and IORA also.
That's again a very important point. But final word to you, General Narayanan. Apart from IONS, IORA, Quad, our bilateral relations with the countries around us and the exercises that the Indian Navy does contribute to the confidence building measures as far as Navy to Navy relationship is concerned. And one has seen that, like what he mentioned, that when the uniformed forces operate together, I think they have a different understanding. So in that case, what would you recommend? I mean, should India increase the tempo and pace of these bilateral exercises with countries around us?
We must and continue to do it. And I would go a step further and I would say that let us bring it all under the umbrella of the IONS and start doing these exercises. If Quad can have a Malabar, why can't IONS have a regular annual exercises with all these countries? If it is going to be, if some countries want to join together, why not have a multilateral exercise with all these neighboring countries? This is what will bring more, you can say, a set of feeling secure with us, and they would welcome these steps. And linked with that, if we can get to giving them the low-end technology and other things that we want to give them, all these builds up to providing them a sort of a secure umbrella where they feel that yes, with them we are secure. They are not coming here like an octopus tentacle to suck us dry, but they are there to help us out.
That's right. That's, I think, a point on which I think I need to conclude this program. It's a given that while India is seen as a net security provider in the Indian Ocean region and around, it needs to have more closer cooperation, maybe more closer exercises with the countries smaller and bigger in the region, and provide a common kind of challenge to what is going to be not too distant future, a bigger challenge coming from China and possibly its collusiveness with Pakistan. On that note, I end this episode of Strategic Insights. Do come back to watch another episode next time, and we'll bring you more interesting guests and of course their insightful knowledge that they have.